So we're doing this morning Psalm 128, Kuf Kaf Chet, and last week we did 127, and these two short Psalms right after another are both within the series of 15 Shir HaMa'alot, the Psalms of Ascent to Yerushalayim, that these two right after each other are really talking about Yerushalayim in different ways. Last week, we compared the building of the Beit HaMikdash to the building of a family, or the building of the Davidic dynasty. And we're going to make another family reference to Yerushalayim, to the city, rather than specifically to the Beit HaMikdash. And so Psalm 128, and you can find it after Mincha on Shabbos in your Siddur. It also appears in certain versions of Kriyat Shema Alamita, and some people, it's not my custom, to say Vayiten Lecha on Motzei Shabbat. It's a series of different readings, and it ends with this psalm. So this psalm is a really nice psalm, and before we end, I hope I'll explain to you why this is in Vayiten Lecha, what there is about this psalm that is so nice to recite it on Motzei Shabbat. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do that as well. But let's just begin. Again, Psalm 128, which is most easily found in a Siddur, unless you have a Tanakh. It's found easily in the Siddur in the series of Shir HaMalot after or during Mincha on Shabbat afternoon. Okay. So Shir HaMalot, and again, this word was in last week's Psalm, and together with the root Hey Lamed Lamed, praise is perhaps the most important term in all of Tehillim, Ashrei, and we usually translate it as happy. I don't like that translation so much. I prefer to say fortunate or contented, or the sense of things are the way they should be. The sense of all is fitting together and working correctly. That's Ashrei. So we begin the poem by saying Ashrei. So who is in this state of contentment? Call Yirei Hashem, all people that revere, fear, are in awe of Hashem. Haholech b'drachav, who walk in his, Hashem's derech. So in other words, contentment comes from the sense of, number one, awe from Hashem, awe for Hashem, and number two, the sense of I am following the path that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has set out for me. And that is, we talk about keeping Jewish law as halacha. It's holech. It is following a path which has been set out by Hashem. So that idea, we're saying at the beginning of this poem, presents contentment. Okay, which is on its own level cool. However, I just want to make a point that's made by the Malbim. The Malbim, Meir Leibush ben Yechiel Michal, great 19th century commentary on all of Tanakh, but his commentary on Psalms is especially outstanding. And he's pointing out that when we begin this poem, we're talking about Yirat Hashem, reverence, awe for God, in three different categories, three different levels. And so let me just quote from the Malbim. So he says, Medaber, Me'ashkachat Hashem u'shmirat at Yisrael, Mikol Oivehem. Okay, so it's talking about, we're in a good place because when we follow these instructions, we're safe by Hashem. But then he says, Yiva'eh Alfanim Sha'ashtadlo Tova Umo'elet. And we're talking about the areas in life where tremendous effort works, B'chelik Shleimut Yirei Hashem L'shlosha. And so what happens is, if you are in this attitude of Hishtadlut, effort to come close to Hashem, when this happens, you can accomplish great things in 3 different areas. Okay, so what are the 3 different areas? Which is what the poem is talking about. Shleimut Atzmo. So the first one it's talking about is, I can find completion, fulfillment for myself. That I, in my own in my own way, so in my own way, I can personally find fulfillment and contentment for myself personally. So that's the beginning of the poem, and that gets into the next pasuk. So first of all, Ashrei, contented, happy, in a good place, are all those people who are in awe of Hashem and walk in Hashem's derech, walk in Hashem's path, as opposed to being off the derech. I mean, this is like perhaps the place where that idiom for being on or off the derech comes from. This may be the source for that that interesting idiom that's become popular in the last few years. And then verse 2, Yegia kapecha. Yegia kapecha. Kaf is, of course, the palm of your hand. So Yegia kapecha means the effort, means the labor, the intense work of your hand. Ki tochal, that what you consume is a result of coming from your own sweat, your own effort. And then it says, Ashrecha v'tov lach, such a person. And this is according to the Malbim, this is the first category that we're discussing. And the first category is the person who individually finds contentment, finds him or herself in the right place, comes from this sense of accomplishment, of being able to support oneself, that what you eat comes from what you have produced with your own hands. This pasuk, which ends with the expression Ashrecha v'tov lach, that person, you will be happy, contented, and it will be good for you. So we've gone beyond the first verse. The first verse says you're contented. Now we're saying it's not only are you personally satisfied, but it is objectively good for you. This pasuk 2, is very famous because it's in the first Mishnah, in the 4th perek of Pirkei Avot. And that famous Mishnah in the name of Ben Zoma, it asks, who is a gibor, who is the scholar, who is the respected person, but then he asks, who is the wealthy person? So the wealthy person is hasameach bechelko, is the person who is happy in their portion. And the proof that Ben Zoma brings down for that person being truly wealthy and happy and contented and in a good place is our pasuk. So our pasuk is saying that when what you eat, what you consume, you feel you earned, that you feel it's really yours, under those circumstances, it brings us a certain level of contentment, and tov lach, it is good for you. The Mishnah goes on to explain, Ashrecha ba'olam hazeh v'tov lach ba'olam haba. that the contentment is in this world and that objective goodness is in the world to come, latid lavo, in the future. I just want to quote from Hirsch for 1 second. Rav Hirsch on this pasuk says, a sweetness of success which is absent from him whose material possessions and luxurious lifestyle comes to him without effort. In other words, being born with a silver spoon isn't necessarily a great recipe for overall spiritual success. I mean, it may mean that you've got a life of plenty, but there is something special about having felt that, I earned this. I really took care of this. Now I'm not a farmer, so, I haven't really, like planted the wheat and then, then harvested it and did all of those different things. I don't have a clue with that. But on the other hand, when you made something, when I bake my own challah, or you do something from scratch, there's a really good feeling. I really missed it this year because of our crazy year. I didn't get a chance to bake my own matzah. There's something about at the Seder when the matzah that you have for, achilat matzah, you baked it yourself. It's a very special feeling. And Rav Hirsch is saying that's what our pasuk is talking about, bigadol, that overall it's very important to feel that the things that you have in life you've worked for and you've earned, and there's a satisfaction in consuming them. There are other people that make different comments. Rabbi Nachman says that it specifically means only working for personal consumption, that when you're working for things beyond, the food on your table, you don't necessarily get the same level. That when when it goes beyond just the sweat of your brow for the basics, you tend to lose some of this. I don't know. I never had that much more than the basics. So I don't know. But it's an interesting idea that Rabbi Nachman was sort of praising this attitude of tzimtzum. But the idea is that it's mine. I really earned it. I worked for it, and I have developed it, and that gives you a sense of something special that is not only subjective, but we're saying it also achieves an objective goodness eventually. This brings us to level number 2. So level number 1 is this sense of personal satisfaction and contentment because I've worked hard and I am now receiving the rewards, the benefits of all of those efforts. And now comes the very special level 2, which is verse 3. Eshtecha kegefen poria biyarkete beitecha. Your wife, your spouse, is compared to a gefen poria, a fruitful, a productive grapevine. Biyarkete beitecha. Now, my translation in front of me, which is the Koren translation, is a nice translation. Within your house is fine. I just want to mention that Robert Alter, the great professor of biblical literature at Berkeley in California, he says a better translation. He says is not just to say within your house. He translates it the recesses of your house. Now, the reason I like that translation is it fits in with the idea of this verse, which again is brought down by Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman says that when it says yarkete, it means that when the husband is working hard to develop the food that the family eats, then the wife is able to stay home, and that is something special. And there are Meforshim that say it's a point of sniut, that Yarkatei Beitecha literally means the deep recesses of the house. I don't know how well that flies today. Women are out in the world and are producing and are very satisfied and happy with their production. Nevertheless, I'm bringing, I don't want to get involved in sociology here or upset anybody, but I'm saying that when you look back in the 19th century and earlier, it talked about the wonderful situation when the wife was able to stay home, and that was considered a positive thing in that period. Okay, I'm okay. Anything else I say, I'm just going to get into trouble. So anyways, so the next level, according to the Malbim, first is your personal, private satisfaction. Now in verse 3, we get to the next level, the family. And the family begins with your relationship with your spouse. That when you feel good about yourself, it's much easier to feel good about your spouse. There's a certain psychology working here that David HaMelech is espousing, which I think has a lot of merit to it. So that when you produce and bring it home, then you feel that your wife is also productive, that you feel good about your relationship because you feel good about yourself. I think there's a lot to be said about that. Rabbi Dr. Avram Twersky, who is really, one of the most amazing people I've ever met, talks very much about how most of the problem, now his area of expertise besides Torah happens to be substance abuse. And he feels that all addictions are a result of low self-esteem. So what we're seeing, David HaMelech, way before, Rabbi Twersky, was saying that if you don't feel good about yourself, it's very hard to have these other relationships. It's got to start with working on yourself, and then it's easier to develop the relationship first with the family. The family, step one is the wife, and then the second half of verse 3 is beautiful. Banecha kishtele zeitim saviv l'shulchanecha. Your children. So first of all, your wife now, because you feel good about yourself. You look at your spouse, and your spouse seems productive. Then you look at your children and say, well, my kids are wonderful, and they're around my table, and that this is just a sense of tremendous contentment. So it is the second level of ashrei, of contentment in the poem. This verse tells us a lot about the economy in Israel at the time of David HaMelech. And it's true to this day. When we want to talk about wealth in Israel, the two major items that get mentioned are gefen, which is grapes, and then zaitim, olives. Those were the two sources or basis of the economy here in Eretz Yisrael. And I lived, Baruch Hashem, for many years in Efrat, and Efrat, the term itself. Oh wow, we got a great quote, Barb Kessel. Thank you. If you see, thank you very much. And I'm told that this is true. I was going to mention it in 2 minutes. But let me get to let me first say, living in Yehuda, and you drive on Route 60. I still live on Route 60. The Derech Hebron is Route 60 here in Yerushalayim. But if you travel on Route 60 here you go south into Yehuda, all over the place, you see the grapevines. You see the grapevines everywhere. This is my son calling from Beersheba. Hi, Yehuda. I'm in the middle of a class. Okay. Do you want to say hello to everybody in my class? Okay. This is Yehuda. Okay. I'll talk to you later. Love you. Bye. So should have turned that off. But anyways, so what happens is you see how the Arab economy in Yehuda is still based upon grapes to a great extent. You go north on Route 60 to my daughter and my son living in the Shomron, in Binyamin, and you see zaytim, you see olive trees everywhere. So to this day, much of Eretz Yisrael still has these particular crops developing, growing around us. But what Bob was pointing out is what I've been told also, and I've never seen it. Even though I've seen a lot of olive trees, most of the time when I see olive trees, they've been cultivated, and when they cultivate the olive trees, they brush around them, so you don't see this phenomenon. But apparently, if you leave olive trees alone and let them develop naturally around the base of the tree, stilim, shoots will come up out of the ground. And that's the image that David HaMelech was talking to an audience that recognized, and I apologize that I don't, but thank you, Bob, for bringing it up, that it surrounds the tree. So when the head of the household, whether it's the man or the woman, doesn't make any difference, when the head of the household feels good about him or herself, and the children are around, there's this sense of, I am the solid tree. I am the trunk around which the family can coalesce. And that's the image, the beautiful image you get here in verse 3. In other words, the breadwinner comes back to the house, the spouse is there, the house seems secure and seems happy. Added to that, you sit down at the table and there are the children who are around and again coalesce around the figures that form the family. And that's what we're talking about in terms of the different circles of contentment that a person can find in their life. And the first one is, I got to feel good about myself. Then it extends to myself, my spouse, my children, okay? And that is very, very beautiful. However, that's not the end of the story. Judaism is not a religion that is really into, just yourself and your family. We're into community. And that's what happens next in the poem, in verse Dalet. Hine ki chen yevorach gaver yirei Hashem. And thus we see how the person shall be blessed who has fear, reverence, respect for Hashem. So we see that it's developing. And this line, verse 4, is just a transitional line to let you know that the end of the poem is not a separate issue. It's a continuation. Again, it starts with me and my relationship with Hashem, which is based upon reverence and awe for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and following Torah and mitzvot. Then it goes to my spouse, my family, and then we get to verse Hey. And you get to verse Hey, and you just wish I knew how to sing. Verses Hey and Vav are a beautiful, beautiful song, and you can look it up later and hear somebody good sing it. Okay, Meryl, maybe I should bring your son here to sing for me when we get to beautiful. I mean, it's just a beautiful verse. I mean, the poetry sings even without the music. Yivarechecha Hashem mitzion. In other words, the blessing that we looked at as personal and familial is also collective and communal. That the concentric circles are just spreading from me, my spouse, my children. Then it's the community, and the community is Zion. Why the name Zion? I mean, David HaMelech could have used, could have said Yisrael, could have used Yerushalayim. Zion, I think, carries with it a beautiful meaning, which is Mitsuyan. outstanding, terrific. You know, everybody, when they did their tests in school, wanted the teacher to write Mitsuyan at the top of the page. Okay? Baruch Hashem, I got to write it on other kids' pages. I think I got to write it a lot more than I ever got it. But okay, be that as it may, it's a wonderful thing, Mitsuyan. And I think David HaMelech was like, you know, was like giving us that subliminal message. Yeah, the prototypical community is Jerusalem around the temple. Jerusalem is concentric circles, right? Jerusalem is, you know, is the Kodesh Kodeshim, circled by the Kadosh, then the Azara, where the Korbanot, then the Ezrat Yisrael, Ezrat Nashim, then there's the area where the Gentiles can be, then there's the entire city, and then it's surrounded by Eretz Yisrael. In other words, Yerushalayim gives us the image of concentric circles, starting with an inner sanctum, a Kadosh Kodashim, right? And it just reverberating and spreading outward from there, just like in our poem. So when David HaMelech says Zion, he's giving us all of these subliminal messages about this is a wonderful situation, but it's also reflective of Zion, which Harabayit, Beit HaMikdash, Yerushalayim. All of that is in that one word, Zion, Sion. Yivarachacha Hashem, that Hashem blesses you. You feel the sense of blessing, increase, a situation which is continually and always improving, which is coming from the concept and from the recognition of Sion. Urei betuv Yerushalayim, Kol Yemei Chayecha, and that you should be able to see the goodness of Jerusalem all the days of your life. Okay, now my translation says, may you see the prosperity, Tuv. So again, the Koran translation, prosperity, Tuv is a little bit different than Tov. Tuv is a noun. Tov is an adjective, okay? That's our grammar lesson for the day. But the difference between the two is Tuv, unlike Tov, is not subjective but objective. When you talk about the Tuv of something, you're talking about an objective goodness of it. And that objective goodness is best seen in the concept of Zion and Yerushalayim. That they represent, in other words, even if you don't go there, in your mind, and sometimes Yerushalayim is sort of best when it's in your mind rather than the reality, okay? But you know, the concept of Yerushalayim is, wow, that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, when we say L'shana Haba Yerushalayim, there is, you know, yes, but it's not just Jerusalem, it's the Yerushalayim that's in our heads. It's that objectively perfect Yerushalayim, and that's the image we're getting, you know, Hashem Mitzion, right? Urei betuv Yerushalayim, Kol Yemei Chayecha, and of course all of the Meforshim jump in. On Kol Yemei Chayecha, back to verse 2, which was Ashrecha v'tov lach, Ashrecha ba'olam hazeh, v'tov lach ba'olam haba, that it's good in this world and in the world to come. So what happens says, thank you, Barb, that Rabbi Art Scroll, okay, I'll comment on that second. I'm going to come back to that idea in a second, but thank you. But I want to finish what I'm doing. So, Kol Yemei Chayecha, again, is hinting at this world and the world to come. Both this world and the world. Kol Yemei Chayecha, not just of this world, but Olam Haba as well. Now, when we say Yerushalayim, that, and I said that sometimes our vision of Yerushalayim is sometimes, perfect and better than the reality. Although I have to give a lot of credit to our new mayor, to Mayor Leon. I think Yerushalayim is becoming more beautiful recently. I think he's doing a better job on keeping things clean. And Yerushalayim is overall in a good situation. But there is Yerushalayim Shalmata and Yerushalayim Shalmala. And sometimes when the Yerushalayim Shalmata, the earthly, Yerushalayim is in somebody else's hands or is in a state of destruction, which is even worse. I mean, there were times when Yerushalayim was beautiful, even though it wasn't ours. The Romans made a beautiful Yerushalayim. I think that's better than when you look at Yerushalayim during much of the last few hundred years, when it was just, a wasteland and just, disgusting and dirty. I think we'd rather see it nice, even if it's somebody else's nice, than to see it when the way it looked, from the Crusaders period till Baruch Hashem, we came home. But nevertheless, when that is true, when the earthly Yerushalayim isn't living up to our expectations, to our dreams, we always have to remember, wow, but there's also Yerushalayim Shamala. So in other words, there's, Yerushalayim always has a sense of perfection. Does that mean that we can't complain about what's going on in Yerushalayim down here? No, we can complain, and we're good at complaining. That's not, I don't think that's what ArtScroll meant, even though I didn't look at the ArtScroll comment. What I think ArtScroll means is a very beautiful idea, which is we always should have an image of the perfect Yerushalayim, but that's not necessarily the Yerushalayim. Sorry, somebody? Okay, that it's very important that we keep in our mind the ideal Yerushalayim, as well as, go to City Hall and complain about, garbage pickup too. I mean, we need both of those images, which brings us to the continuation of the thought, verse A. And in that continuation of the thought in verse A, brings to verse Vav, Ure'e banim livanecha. People didn't live so long, before the previous century, and it was considering a tremendous blessing when you live to see grandchildren. And so the pshat, when you get right away to Vav, is this concept of living to see the continuation. Chazal talk about nothing is solid until you get to 3. Once, twice is good, but you don't have the sense of continuity until you get to 3. We talk about Yaakov Avinu as being the choice of the Avot. Why was he so special? Because he was the first Jew who had a relationship with a grandparent. And this idea of having grandchildren is very, very potent. I must say that, again, it's Rabbi Nachman that brings down when in verse Urei banim levanecha isn't only talking about children. And this is something as an educator, I'm very proud when I see some of my students who are now teaching others, that it's not just children, it's also your students, it's also your the people that you have had a positive influence on, influencing others. It's when you see the 3rd generation that you really feel that that there is true continuity going on. Once you get to the 3rd link, you start to feel that it's now a chain, and that's what we want to. That's what we really want to feel. We want to really feel that I have mechutin on the lines. I have to be careful what I say here. But it was, I love all my grandchildren. Rivka and I have 34 grandchildren. We love them all. But there's something special about, my first grandchild who carries my last name. It's like, there is a sense of continuity. And even though, all it's your students, it's your children, and you love all of them. But it's hard to deny that when you have this sense of it's going to continue, then you can feel I am going to live forever. Then I really feel like I got the bracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was always giving to the avot, ulezaracha achrecha, and to your children after you. And this is very, very powerful. So, urei vanim levanecha, and you'll see children to your children. Then, and only then, when you see that continuity, when you truly sense that what's going on is not a flash in the pan, what's going on is truly stable and will be continued, then Shalom Yisrael. Then you can really say, wow, there is fulfillment, there is peace, there is something special going on, Al Yisrael, for all of Israel. So again, I want to reiterate, before I read another comment from Hirsch, I want to reiterate the comment of the Malbim, which for me is the pshat, okay? Even though I'm going to say another idea in a minute. This idea, I think, is very powerful, okay? That the poem, David HaMelech, who understands, life very, very well, sees, first I have to feel good about myself, and that comes from my relationship with Hashem. Then, when I feel good about myself, I can have a successful marriage, and my children can grow and develop. And then I am able to take a stable and productive, fruitful position in society. The perfect society as described by the Torah as Yerushalayim and its concentric circles of Kedusha. And when I see that this is stable and it has continuity, then I can say, Shalom Yisrael. Then I can feel content. Then I can feel, wow, this is what it's all about. I mean, it's an amazing poem, but I just want to give a slightly different idea that's Hirsch, but is commented on by Rabbi Weinreb. Rabbi Weinreb's a very wise psychologist. And he says, the God-fearing Jew does not see himself and his family the ultimate source of blessing. For he knows that he is only a branch, a small part of a larger circle whose center is Zion and Jerusalem. The fortunate man finds his work life productive and his family life gratifying. However, he feels incomplete unless he finds a role to play in the larger community of Israel. He strives to see the prosperity, the happiness of Jerusalem and all Israel. Even when surrounded by his children's children, he can exclaim, it is peace be on all of Israel. That we see ourselves in these concentric circles, and it's not enough to just see it within myself. I have to see it as part of this continuum which goes on, Be'ezrat Hashem, ad infinitum. Baruch Hashem, I'm talking to people here. My feed, which goes to the States on Facebook, didn't work this morning. Maybe it's providential. We really feel this here in Eretz Yisrael. It's like the community in communities that we had in America. Yeah, they were really cool, but there was always this sense of a community in America is by its nature not just fragile, but very ephemeral. You know, I don't know how many of you have ever traveled on the Grand Concourse in the Bronx. It's just an amazing phenomenon to see one after another of these gorgeous buildings, many of them put up in the 30s and into the 40s, of Jewish, you know, a Jewish Y, you know, a shul, a temple, and, you know, and now they're all Pentecostal churches, but whatever. It's really very, very humbling. But then you come to Eratika, and you know, you visit the old city, and you go into the Jewish quarter, and it's like, it's not just the Beit HaMikdash. Yeah, I mean, that's the coolest. But it's also, you go to the Ramban synagogue. You know, here's a shul that's been there for over 700 years. Yes, there was unfortunately a hiatus when it wasn't, but except for 19 years when the Jordanians were there and turned it into a stable, that shul for 700 years was functioning. I mean, you just can't see that in Chutz La'aretz. And our poem is not only talking about the here and now, and yes, there are wonderful communities, you know, Lakewood, Muncie, Teaneck, Brooklyn, all of this. Okay, they're all wonderful, okay? And I'm not trying to denigrate any of them, but you can't get the end to the poem. You can get the here and the now, but you can't get Pasuk Vav. You can't get this sense of, wow, I'm building something for the ages. That idea just doesn't exist in Chutz La'aretz. It only exists here in Eretz Yisrael. And you can get, you know, you can get through 5 verses and feel that it's working even in Muncie or Brooklyn, right? But when you get to verse Vav, it's like, it doesn't work. And it's like, oh, well, I don't get it. I don't get it. But you know what they see in Lakewood, I just don't understand. Okay, but okay, that's a discussion another time. But it's part of what we're doing these few weeks, because this is the second small poem about Yerushalayim that we did. We're going to do another one next week. Next week we're going to do Psalm 133, and it's like I've been doing this on purpose because I feel for myself that I feel like it's getting me ready for Yom Yerushalayim. It's getting me ready to celebrate our relationship with Yerushalayim, and it's like David HaMelech just not only knew how to write poetry and had a wonderful relationship with Hashem. He really understood people, and that's what our poem is teaching us. It's teaching us how to be happy, and the psychology of the poem is for me, you know, even greater than the ideology of the poem. But right now in Eretz Yisrael, we can't escape from the ideology of it, which is, you know, when I build my family here and I build my community here, there's a sense of it'll be here tomorrow, and you can't feel that outside of Eretz Yisrael. And so why anybody would want to be there? Sometimes escapes me. Okay, thank you all for joining. I hope we'll see you next week, and we're going to be doing, like I said, Psalm 133 next week, and we'll continue. I see there's another comment. Let me just check. Comment is no, doesn't. Okay. Okay, again, thank you all, and Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful, great week. And as we start to leave our houses, please be safe. Okay, be safe.